path of a SEND parent, parents of children with disabilities and neurodivergences, is always unknown. Few expect to be here. It involves navigating new terrain and often comes with a surging mixture of emotions that can reveal a love unimaginably strong, but also knock parents sideways. We want to invite you in to connect to this experience and explore with us how, as professionals, we can best support SEND parents along the way.
My name's Poppy and I work with Mammoration. We run support groups for parents of children with disabilities and neurodivergences, and they're a space for parents to bring their big emotions and process them and find ways to be well along this journey. A lot of what these parents bring is not so much big emotions around their child, but about how the world around relates to their child. And this particularly comes up with professionals and experiences with SEND professionals. It struck us that professionals are in such a unique role when it comes to parents of children with disabilities. They can be a really supportive guiding light in a journey which to the parents is very unknown, but to professionals they're seeing parents going through this type of experience all the time. And so we really hope that this project is going to increase the levels of empathy between the professionals and the parents so that that support can become even more meaningful and empowering.
Getting it right is not easy. It's a very particular path, and if we haven't walked it ourselves, then it can be hard to empathise with parents' needs and sensitivities. Our hope for this film is that it might help us step inside the unique challenges that arise at different stages of the journey, so we can better understand how to respond to them. For many parents, the journey begins long before a child's diagnosis, noticing differences in their child's behaviour or development. There might be feelings of uncertainty and a strong need to seek professional opinion so that they can take action if needed. It is an incredibly vulnerable thing to bring worries about a child to a professional. For many people hearing these concerns, the impulse is to reassure and minimise worries. But in fact, this can feel like being brushed off or not listened to. What really helps is to take concerns seriously, to start from a place of believing the parent, and to actively seek to understand more.
When she started to have seizures, it wasn't like the classic seizure, so she was having absent seizures where kind of your eyes start to flicker and your eyes roll and stuff. So it was quite difficult for me to describe that to the GP when I went there. It was almost like they wanted to see video evidence, but it's very difficult to, while something's happening, especially when you're trying to ensure that the person's safe, to get a video. So I mentioned it to the doctor and he was just kind of dismissed it and was like, no, it can't be that, okay. It got to a point where it was so regular, I was like, okay, surely they're going to be able to understand what's going on and do something about it. But when I went in again, he was like, have you got any videos? So they clearly didn't believe what I was saying. So it went on for so long and then it just developed and got even worse. In fact, it was so regular that she was having it probably went up to from 30 to 60 times a day, and if not more. We went to get an appointment with the consultant, and at that appointment she had a drop seizure. And then it was finally at least somebody's seen it. Obviously it's horrible for her to have the seizure, but it was almost the right place and the right time for her to have it, where they were able to understand what was going on with her. And it was almost like, am I seeing things? Is this just a figment of my imagination? Am I starting to go mad? What a relief that they've actually seen it happen, and now they understand that everything I'd been telling them had actually been happening. It's like you're literally fighting for everything, and that's not what you need.
Corey's diagnosis was a relief because it had taken me nearly 8 years to get anyone to even listen to me. And now I'm on year 5 of trying to get Xander diagnosed. He's 11 now. It's just difficult when doctors don't want to listen to a parent. And I used to put it down to my age. They just think I'm a teenage mum looking for an excuse for not being able to cope. But as I've gotten older, it's got no better. I feel like I'm bashing my head against a brick wall most of the time and then just keeping my head above water at home. Without people who need to listening, I'm on my own dealing with that. Regardless of if they're married, they've got money, they've got no money, they're single, they're a teenager. If they are saying something to you and they have taken the time to actually go on a waiting list for God knows how long to see you, listen to them.
Another huge concern for many parents at this stage is missing any chance to make helpful interventions for their child. It often feels like time is ticking, opportunities are being passed by, and support is sorely needed. And yet they feel entirely in the dark about what to do. Parents have told us how much they value it when, even before a clear diagnosis, professionals share their observations about their child, so that they can feel empowered to start taking action.
It seems like there's help if you're diagnosed and nothing if you're not. Like, the biggest thing for me about getting both of my children diagnoses isn't to be able to say that my children have got this or to claim any money. It's to open doors. I was offered nothing. Like, in between sort of him going and figuring out that, like, actually diagnosing with autism, which, again, I will say took nearly 7 years, we were left with nothing. It wasn't, this child's under investigation, here's some support for now. I didn't even know that Makaton was a thing until after he could speak. Offer these things to parents, say, look, there's this other way of being able to communicate. Maybe you could try this with your child. These are ear defenders. They help children like this when they're overwhelmed outside. Maybe they would make use of this, but they don't tell. It's like they have secrets and they don't let you in until you're part of the club. Without a diagnosis and then the offer of proper training from me, what am I supposed to do with a 16, 17, 18-year-old that wants to go out? I'm not going to be able to keep him inside forever.
The social worker just kept saying to me, but what is it that you want? And I was saying, well, I don't really know what's available. So I was just wondering if there is anything that's available to me, if you could tell me what that is. Well, what is it that you want exactly? And this kind of this circle of her repeating the question and me kind of saying, well, I don't know what there is. 7 years later, I still don't feel like I understand what's available. It's never been freely offered. You know, you can say, well, these are the options, and we're either going to do them or we're not going to do them. But I don't feel like that is unfortunately available to parents like myself in social care. It's not a great relationship where you feel like you have to be kind of needy and vulnerable and a bit begging in order to get something, and you're not really sure what it is that you can get. And then you speak to other parents and you realise that actually they get way more or way less than you, and they may have a very similar setup, and it's not empowering and it's not collaborative, and I don't feel equal. I felt a bit stupid for asking, actually. And actually at that point it took quite a lot of energy for me to make that phone call and put myself out there a little bit. And so, you know, I think parents, particularly when they're quite new to a diagnosis, particularly maybe if they're new parents or their child's very young and there's a lot going on, they're so vulnerable, they're so fragile. They need to be really taken care of. And even if a service can't help, they should leave that service feeling like they've been heard and that they have an idea of something else that could support them.
By the time parents receive a diagnosis, many have travelled a long way already. For others, they are receiving a diagnosis completely out of the blue. Either way, there is often a huge mixture of feelings. They may feel shocked, even when the diagnosis is what they have been waiting for. They may feel grief, as they confront the path ahead and how different it is to what they'd been expecting. They may feel relieved to finally have something solid to hold on to. This moment is likely to be remembered forever. Parents have shared with us that what they need here is acknowledgement and validation for whatever they are experiencing. They need the opportunity to express their feelings if they want to, and the acknowledgement that strong emotions may arise and that this is natural and normal.
In the first couple of years, where we were discovering the extent of Mishy's disability, there were a lot of offhand comments or communications from different specialists, because Mishy doesn't have just one specialist. Some of them will just say things like, just enjoy your child, have nothing to worry about, just see what happens, without really taking into account the anxiety of knowing or not knowing whether your child is going to have an extreme mental disability, grow up to have the mental age of a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old. Sometimes they would give us facts or results without looking at the impact of what they say. It could be that he might not be able to run or he might not be able to walk. But I guess for professionals, it's just like a passing comment, whereas for us, it's like, oh my God, does this mean that when he's 6 he won't be able to, to do this or that? It would be great if professionals could put themselves in the parents' shoes before opening their mouths and thinking, how is this person going to perceive the information that I'm about to give them? What impact is that going to have on their current emotional state? And that involves also, I guess, acknowledging what we're saying, even if they don't agree with what we're saying or don't believe that what we're saying is right. At least acknowledge that, oh, that is what they're thinking, that is what they're worried about. Let me clarify that. We're coming in worried and concerned and thinking about what's going to happen next year, in 2 years' time. So we want communication that sort of acknowledges and reflects the intensity of that journey.
Callie didn't have a diagnosis until after she was born, and so it was a bit of a surprise when she was taken to NICU and we didn't know very much about what was going on. And unfortunately our first experience of diagnosis was really difficult. Being observed by trainees late at night with no preparation as to what he was about to say to us. He came in with a list of markers, they call them, in his head, and he reeled them off. And that just felt like he wasn't seeing us and he wasn't seeing my daughter. He was seeing a diagnosis. Well, I mean, I think it says something that 8 years on, I still find it really difficult to talk about that. I find it kind of haunting that that he thought it was a good idea to let trainees watch that, and the fact that they were standing up and we were sitting down. It was kind of so awful that I've just had to kind of pack it away. And because since then, health has actually been, on the whole, really supportive, but it still remains something that, as I speak to you, I feel pretty emotional talking about it. So I guess a lot of it is around being very person-centred, picking up on what clues the parents are giving, and really being there with them with their emotions.
While strong emotions are often present, parents also say that they need to hear that difference and disability are not a tragedy, or that their child is a case to be pitied. They need the reality of the unique challenge they face to be acknowledged, but the value of their child to be seen and affirmed.
I think the only other thing I was thinking is just that how much of an impact these conversations make in terms of what happens afterwards. It really has affected not exactly how I bonded with my child, but how I learnt to love her. And I feel like I've always had to hold her a little bit at arm's length from my heart because the first conversations were so dreadful and the subsequent one we were given no hope. People don't really seem to understand actually that parents can have the full range of love for a child that is perhaps going to have a very short life, or a life which is very complicated by medicine or other disability or complexities. And I think that is quite hard for medical people to understand quite how much love we have for our children when we have children that people wouldn't necessarily choose.
When Kai was first born, so Kai was about 3 months old, and the health visitor comes over, and she was actually really, really awkward with the term Down syndrome. She said, "Oh, are you comfortable?" Or no, something about Downs. So in the end, I said, "Do you mean Down syndrome?" And she said, "Yes." And then the conversation was really kind of stilted from then on. People generally, and this is a whole, not just professionals, this is a world problem, that people are frightened of the diagnosis of additional needs and special needs. And no professional's going to realise they're doing that. This little lower level Down syndrome or whatever else, they're not going to realise that that's chipping away gradually. So that parent will expect to be a second-class citizen. There doesn't seem to be much time spent on celebrating that situation, because as a parent of a child with special needs, I absolutely know it rocks.
Emphasising the value of the child continues to be important after diagnosis. Demonstrating respect for a child's differences, being curious about what the world is like for them, and avoiding blaming language ensures parents aren't left with the pain of judgment on their child for who they are.
When they use terms that appear to me to be quite negative, it's happened on frequent occasions. I am told that my child is refusing to do something. It literally makes my heart kind of like race. It's funny how even just recalling it makes me feel emotional. The word refusing doesn't mean that the person saying it isn't trying to understand what's going on for my child. She can't communicate what's going on for her. She hasn't got that skill. That's part of her disabilities, let's put it that way. So it's even more important that professionals that are working with my child try to walk in her shoes and try to understand, because she hasn't got that skill. It means yet again I feel obliged to advocate on her behalf. And I'm already busy. I'm a working mum and a lone parent, and I have quite a lot to do. There's no point in going in like crying or angry because I won't get what I need from my child. So I have to think twice as hard. And what I want is for someone to say, we struggle to engage Arabella today. This is what happened beforehand. This is what happened in the lesson. I wonder if you've got any ideas or any suggestions. If they're not curious and they're just making, she refused to engage, or refused to participate, what does that say about them and the assumptions they're making about my child?
Once parents have received their child's diagnosis, they are faced with the ongoing process of putting support into place. There are many different paths to navigate, professionals to contact, and new terms to understand. It can be lonely and incredibly stressful, and parents often feel left in the dark, left hanging, or ghosted by long periods of silence. They've told us that it is game-changing to have reliable contact and communication, which lets them know that someone's got their back.
Once we disappear from their view, it's tricky, because often we're waiting for phone calls to be returned, for letters to arrive, for emails to be answered, and the longer that space is left, the more space is left for us to worry and for that concern to grow, and to then feel more upset when we actually have those conversations. And so it was those moments of waiting for communication that were really really intense emotionally for us. It's really difficult when you're in those really heightened moments of worry for your child, for your brain not to go into the worst case scenarios. Because I think the times where I have felt most supported and more attuned with the professionals are when they're on the ball about these little things. If they return the call when they're meant to return it, it's like, oh, great, I don't have to go and chase it, because you feel like you're being attacked by not being respected through all these failures of communication. And instead of that, it'd be more like the team that you're supposed to be.
It is a tough, ongoing journey. SEND provision is underfunded and people are under pressure on all sides. When there have been long waiting times, unanswered emails and things not going as planned, it is helpful for parents simply to have this acknowledged. Honesty goes a long way towards the feeling of solidarity, that the professionals and parents are up against it together.
I assume that part of the problem is around funding, and it would actually be so refreshing if someone could say to me, look, I would love to give you that. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that for families at the moment, but I really hear that you need that, and I really wish that we were in a situation to be able to give you more support. That would go so far with me. That would stop my brain from rumbling over about, do I need to push more? Is there more out there? Am I being greedy?
If we, the professional and I, can connect somehow, so I understand what's going for them. And to be fair to my child's school, staff being off and short staff, and they're having real difficulty recruiting. And so maybe just that shared understanding of each other, there's that little bit of getting to know each other thing.
Be a bit more transparent about the struggles they're having as a system. Don't just leave us for 6 months with no contact, or when we phone, never ever get back to us. Say, sorry, we're extremely busy at the moment, or let us know that there is we don't know if we're going to be able to get this assistance for you because of money, and even if they're diagnosed, maybe the school won't be able to help as much as you think but just don't leave us hanging.
These principles are like signposts on the path. They can point the way in interactions with SEND parents. Professionals are there as the journey unfolds, and with these small acts of empathy, we have the opportunity to transform a lonely and disorientating path into one in which parents feel empowered, cared for and trusted, and where their children's value is affirmed and celebrated. For parents who are often isolated and under severe stress, these small acts can make a huge difference to their path. To summarise, believe them. Start from a place of trust and seek to know more, so that they can feel respected and not just a troublesome parent. Empower them to act. Share your observations and give them tools, so that they can channel their concerns into action. Acknowledge their feelings and validate their experience, so that they realise it is normal and acceptable to feel huge emotions as a SEND parent, fiercely loving someone who society may not understand. Show that you value the child, so that they can avoid the pain of feeling judgments about the worth or unique needs of their child. Stay in touch, so that they can trust you've got their back and they haven't been lost in the system. Be upfront about service limitations, delays or mistakes, so that you can be united in the struggle in getting the best for their child.
She never second-guessed anything I said. She took everything I said at face value, do you know what I mean?
He listened to everything that I suggested, including some pretty far out there suggestions, and he didn't dumb me down at all. He listened to them all. He explained kindly which ones were possible, and then he said, I don't really want to say no to things. Let's see what we can do about that.
First thing this paediatrician did was say hello to Kai, which I nearly fell on the floor because nobody had ever done that before. Told me that Kai was exactly the right height, exactly the right weight, everything for a child with Down syndrome at the age that he was. And it felt really, really lush and really normal, and just felt like it was not biggie,
When you open the door, there's like a big, and she sees Arabella, my child, she genuinely has a smile as though she's happy to see her. It feels like she actually really likes her. I think she genuinely cares about her.
So just having that somebody to support in even that kind of way, it made a massive difference.
That was the most healing experience, to realise that there were people in the system that wanted to support us as a family and that wanted to see my child thrive.